I don't know why you have to read that garbage to the boy, Aunt Valerie shouted from the other room. Uncle James winked at him. He likes it, Mother. Well, then he's as nuts as you are. I can tell you this much. The Lord doesn't like that filthy stuff. He's condemning your souls to hell right now.
Welcome to Unsettling Reads, Season 2, Episode 6. I'm H.J. Brown.
And I'm Robin Knable.
Today we are reviewing Mommy May I by A.K. Alexander, the pen name of author Michelle Scott. The Kindle version was published August 2020 and weighs in at 342 pages. Let me introduce you to A.K. Alexander. A.K. Alexander is the pen name of Michelle Scott, and I'm going to be reading from Michelle Scott's website here. Michelle Scott is the author of the best-selling mystery Murder Uncorked and the Nikki Sands Wine Lover Mysteries, which are currently being produced for a network television series. She's also written the highly acclaimed novel Happy Hour, in addition to several international best-selling thrillers under her pen name A.K. Alexander. Her thrillers have reached the top 10 bestseller lists in the U.S. and the U.K. Alexander's thrillers tend to be a little grittier and have you, quote, looking over your shoulder. Daddy's Home, one of her other novels, has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Her thrillers have in fact been on the New York Times bestseller list, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and Kindle bestseller list, where Daddy's Home remained at number 1 in the UK for several weeks and number 4 in the US.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mills Florence Cosmetics. Looking for the perfect lip liner or a top-of-the-line face mask? Look no further. Our products are never tested on animals and are plastic-free. Shop Mills Florence when you want your look to knock 'em dead.
Very clever. I like that one. Okay, well, this is the part we call, well, hello there. Mm-hmm. Usually, it's Robin's pick or my pick, and we check with each other to find out how we've discovered the book. But this time, it's an extra one. We got an extra week in March. Bonus week. So we pulled from our review and request file, which Robin will talk a little bit more about at the end. So through our recommendations and request forms on the website, we came across Mommy May I. And we've been working with Michelle and her assistant Nicole to make this episode happen. So thank you so much for that. And now it's time to jump into our recon and review. Remember, no spoilers, not even great twist. We want you to experience this book. But we'd like to give you a little heads up to see if it's the kind of thing that it might be for you. So Robin, from the start, you're so good at this. You like these. What would your log line, your short summary be for this book? Give us your movie trailer.
All right. What happens when there are too many secrets? When the past won't stay buried, who will pay the ultimate price?
I like it.
Dun, dun, dun.
I just love your in a world. Like you always nail it.
I just can't stop it. How about you? What is your log line for this?
I tried a little. I think I was channeling you a little bit because mine are a little more movie trailer than they usually are. But here it comes. Sometimes vengeance is a dish served cold and to the wrong people.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I like it.
Or my backup was forget daddy issues. The real trouble happens when you haven't dealt with the mother of all problems.
I do like that. It's very fitting. It's very fitting.
So, Robin, how did the entire read go for you? Was it a wild ride or a slow burn or a blend of the two? How did it sit for you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being wild?
Well, I'm going to give this one a 4. It stayed pretty even keel for me, except for a handful of those more thrilling scenes, which definitely ramped up the suspense and the danger in the story.
Right.
How about you, though? This is normally your genre realm, and I'm curious what you have to say on this one.
For people who've been listening to the show at all, they know that Robin and I overlap heavily in the horror department. She tends to be a little more fantasy oriented, although I have some interest there too. And then I tend to be more thriller oriented, and she has some interest. So this is she's right. So I do read more thrillers than she tends to, and so as a result, I'd say I'm accustomed to those sorts of chills and thrills. So I'd give it around a 3 with a few spiky 6s or 7s, which added to the fun. We'll go with that. So, Robin, how did you feel about the character development in this novel? What'd you think?
I felt like I got a lot of good backstory on the characters, which made them seem pretty realistic to me. It was a lot of fun getting to know each one and watch their story arcs over time. There weren't too many characters, so I didn't have any issues with names or trying to distinguish them from one another. I did like the darkness and edginess that some of them had, though, so that made me happy. How about you?
I also had a really easy time keeping everyone straight, which sometimes can be a challenge in books, because I did find it had a reasonable, yes, there were only so many main characters, but there were enough peripheral characters and enough echoing storylines that I can see where someone under other circumstances could start to struggle a little bit to keep track of who's who. But Alexander does a good job of developing everyone in such a way that you really have no questions. So you actually came across something that spoke to the character angle, and I thought really made so much sense to me when I read this blurb.
Yeah.
Why don't you, because I thought...
Yeah, I'll read that. It's from Amazon, and it's a note from the author, and she said, "When I wrote Mommy May I had read quite a few thrillers, and I would get to the end of the book and question, what made the killer a killer? Was he born that way? Did he grow up in an environment that influenced his path to kill and cause great harm?" So her questions were always around nurture versus nature, and she'd read quite a few books on FBI profiling at the time, too, so helped her, give some background to some of these characters that maybe you wouldn't see in some other thrillers.
Yeah.
Yeah, she continued on and said, "These questions made me want to write a book that showed the development of this killer. How had he become such a monster?" It wasn't really an easy book for her to write, she said, but she still just wanted to write it, so I'm glad she did. It was really interesting, the places she took him.
I think she did a really good job of mining that undercurrent that causes this situation. It's definitely a big piece of the story. Okay, so we have something called the Under the Bedometer score, where we give it a ranking of 1 to 5 blankets based on how scary the villain or story is and how many blankets you'd want to hide under while reading this book. So, Robin, you are notoriously hard. I mean, you are a hard marker on this blanket business. So,
I am.
How many blankets went over your head while reading this one?
There was some disturbing stuff in the book, but it didn't scare me. And I feel kind of bad after looking at some other people's reviews who had to put the book down on occasion. This one lady had said, but I'm still giving it 1 blanket because I don't know.
Because you're deranged.
My deranged soul can only give this 1 blanket. What's your blanket count?
Well, I kind of rejoin you in the derangement because it was the kind of thrill ride that didn't creep into my nightmares. So I would agree with that overall. I might bump it up to a 1.5 or 2, just in that it served to remind me that there are people out there like this. I think I've read enough or seen enough shows of this nature that it's almost like exposure therapy.
Right.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, because I can see where some people could be...
If it's one of your... Yeah, if you don't usually read something like this and it creeps and it just... I don't know. So what about the trippy continuum, as we call it? So that's how fantastical versus how realistic.
Definitely a realistic book. I didn't find anything in here that would venture into a fantastical place.
Yeah, I agree. It's intended to be very true to life, and it is very true to life. It's not a lot of supernatural elements by any stretch. How about the setting? How did this play into the enjoyment of the story for you?
Well, being the weirdo that I am, as we've already discussed, I thought it was pretty interesting. As of late, we've had a variety of books with funeral homes as settings. I don't know why we keep doing this, but I guess we are keeping to our unsettling theme without even realizing it.
We're doing real well.
But, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there is a setting in the book that definitely brings on a creepy vibe, and it stands out to me, but I can't really say.
Yeah, she doesn't
I don't want to give it away. We are spoiler free, but there are some settings in here that could be a little disturbing. Yeah,
I would agree. I think that the villains' lairs were some of the highlight sections for me. So there was a lot of fun stuff going on. I mean, disturbing stuff, but and also just that there was more than one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Usually, if a villain has a lair,
exactly.
Well, this one he's multiple throughout the course of the story. So
yeah.
How about, did you learn anything interesting that piqued your inner nerd as you were reading this novel?
Of course I did.
I know you did.
It's like that nerd is always lurking at the surface. But there were a few mentions of the Edgar Allan Poe short story, Ligeia, and I actually found a copy of it on YouTube being read by none other than Vincent Price. It's spectacular.
Done.
I will post a link in the show notes.
That needs to go in the show notes.
It is fantastic to hear. There is nothing like that man reading something creepy. So, yes.
Oh, well done, you. That's going to be really good in the show notes. Oh,
how about you?
Really like that one. I was sort of fascinated by the hydraulic walls.
Yes.
Without giving, I don't think that's giving too much away. It's one little teeny thing. Being kind of a house nerd and doing renovations over the years, I was like, hydraulic walls.
I expect to see this in the future.
Yeah, let's talk. So that was kind of interesting. I'll just leave it there.
Let's go ahead and put this in context with some other books, movies, shows, experiences, anything that might pair nicely with this book or enhance that reading experience. So the first thing we're going to talk about is who would love the book, who should avoid it, any notes about that.
Well, I think if you like James Patterson, that's the easiest, most well-known person I can say off the top of my head. Like a James Patterson classic thriller, serial killer, chasey kind of thing, then you're really going to like that. I think people who prefer more fantastical stories, people who prefer stories set in the current time, this was a callback to the late 90s, early 2000s, right, give or take. And I think that in some cases, if that's not something you're like, no, it must be current, right now, happening right now, current events, and it has to have fantastical elements, then, this might not be for you.
Probably not for you.
Yeah. What'd you think?
I think thriller readers, the whodunit fans, anyone who enjoys a book where you're trying to look at the clues and figure out what happened, which is a lot of fun. Maybe fans of Catherine Coulter or Sandra Brown, maybe.
Those are good ones.
So
yeah.
I felt like those really fit.
Yeah.
As for who should avoid it, anyone who is squeamish about violence toward humans or animals, there are definitely some scenes that could disturb some people. They're not overly graphic or anything like that.
Yeah.
She does a really good job of letting you know what's going to be happening or what has happened, but she's not going to push it right in your face. But if it is disturbing to you, avoid.
Even the notion of it. Yeah, because really it's the notion of it more than the description of it. All right, well, what about what we like to call shadows, doppelgangers, evil twins, and echoes? Are there other works of art that felt like they shared a kinship with this book in some way?
Absolutely. And of course, I tend to gravitate to the creepy moments.
Right.
And as I was reading through this, it made me think of an episode of The Blacklist.
Oh.
And I had to rack my brain to find it because I'll tell you right now, my search on my computer is disturbing because when I was trying to locate this episode and the things I had to type in to find it.
Your house.
But yes. So it really fits with parts of the book. It's season 7, episode 9 of The Blacklist. And the episode is called The Orion Relocation Service. And it's a great episode, but yeah.
I don't know if we'll be able to link to that or not, but we'll try to make reference to that because that's a really good reference.
How about you?
Well, Kiss the Girls is what immediately sprung to mind, going back to James Patterson. And also doing more recent things. The Bundy series on Netflix, Extremely Wicked and Shockingly Evil and Vile, had some elements I think would be complementary. And on the Netflix platform as well, the Mindhunter series, which really gets into why these people become the monsters that they become. So that speaks to a lot of the things that motivated her to write the book in this way. So also just a good classic Lifetime Movie Network thriller from the good old days. I used to really love those.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
a good one.
Okay, well, what about a perfect pairing? What would enhance this reading experience? It can be circumstances, foods, drinks, music, anything.
I'm going to go with an Edgar Allan Poe book and perhaps a little Dom
Perignon.
Perignon.
You're going fancy.
I'm fancy. Little champagne.
I really like the Poe, especially with that link read by Vincent Price. It's going to be fun. That is a fantastic call. I'd say maybe a Bloody Mary.
Ooh.
With a... maybe kind of a curly straw.
Oh, yeah, nice long straw.
Yeah, nice long straw to pull that Bloody Mary out of there. I gobbled this in 2 sittings while under the covers, so I didn't even need the Bloody Mary or the Poe. So, yeah, it's a very
nice
rapid read.
All right, it's time to step into the ring, one of our favorite parts. In each episode, we review our leading champion in our literary death match. We're going to put our reigning champ up against the current book and see which one comes on top for both of us based on our own personal preferences.
Right.
So at the end of the year, we will have 2 winners.
Yep.
So Dare's winner before was Ring Shout. And how is it doing now against Mommy May I?
Well, I mean... this is the thing. It's going to be hard to beat Ring Shout for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think any author should take it personally if Ring Shout comes in and just wallops them pretty solidly, because it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
It's her catnip, people.
It's my catnip. I'm a dog person who has catnip. So it was kind of no contest, but not to besmirch Mommy May I, but Mommy was way too soft for Ring Shout. She was outshouted.
She was outshouted.
Okay, so how about you?
Well, Bones was my recent winner by Andrew Cull.
Right.
And I will say that Mommy May I did have some of the good creepy things I do like.
Right.
But sadly, like you, I'm having a really hard time shaking Bones as a winner. It's just, it is so up my alley. So, Mommy May I, still a great read, but Bones is going to have to move forward right now. So, looks like we're ring shouting Bones for the next time for April. We'll have to see what happens.
Okay, so there are so many great books out there, and we want people to find the right books for them. We can only review so many books on our podcast and blog every month, so we like to give shout outs to other organizations that are doing this excellent work. So this week, we'd like to highlight Suspense Magazine. You can find them at suspensemagazine.com. Pulling from their website, Suspense Magazine was started in 2007. They thought that there was a need to have a platform where all authors could showcase their work. It's tough to write books, but selling your books is like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen, is what they're saying. They started Suspense Radio a couple years later, and in 2014, they expanded to include 4 shows. So there's Crime and Science Radio, hosted by Doug Lyle and Jan Burke, which is at crimeandscienceradio.com. They also have best-selling author Stephen James hosting The Story Blender, where he talks great storytelling by great storytellers. So you can find that at thestoryblender.com. Inside Edition is where it all started, and you'll hear author interviews and more. Then there's Beyond the Cover, is hosted by a master reviewer and author Jeff Ayers and John Rabe. They cover everything within the genre, not just books, but movies, plays, and more. So one of those is bound to be up your alley. You can find out more about all of them on suspensemagazine.com. And they're also out of California, which is perfect because this book is set in California.
Exactly.
I thought that was kind of a nice little dovetail.
All right, so we'd love for you guys to subscribe so you don't miss our next podcast on April 14th. We're going to review my April pick, The Final Six by Alexandra Monier. You can also find all of our podcasts on our website at unsettlingreads.com. We have blog reviews of the books we've chosen to read outside of the show since we can't fit all of these awesome books we love onto the podcast. We can also be found on Twitter at Unsettling Reads as well as on Instagram and Facebook. We would love it if you wanted to share us out with some other readers who would be interested in the show. Links will be posted to Suspense Magazine as well as to Michelle Scott's website, her books, and social media outlets, and any other fun things we've discussed today. Also, Dare and I want to let you guys know that our submissions are now closed for our anthology, and we are working on editing and preparing for the upcoming publication coming this spring, which is just around the corner. So we're really excited.
Beautiful work.
Also, as Dare had mentioned earlier, which is how we found the Mommy May I book, on our website, unsettlingreads.com, you will find a place called Request a Review at the top. Just click on that, and there are some forms on there if you have a book you would like us to look at, to review on the blog or possibly the podcast, depending on what our time schedule is like and what the book is and if it fits with our
we
themes.
can't make any promises, but we do love those recommendations.
We actually do.
Whether you wrote the book or you just love the book, go fill in that form and send them our way. We would never have discovered this book otherwise.
Exactly.
All right, well now, if you came here to hear what we thought of Mommy May I by A.K. Alexander, you're done. If, however, you have a minute and you want to hear about some other unsettling things, then come and hang out with me and Robin as we go into Off the Clock.
Off the clock.
Off the clock.
Off the clock.
All right, Robin, what else have you been doing to unsettle yourself lately?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've been reading The Life Below, which is the sequel to The Final Six, which, as we mentioned before, is going to be the book selection for the April 14th podcast. And I will be putting a blog up for that sequel once the podcast is aired because, you don't want to hear about it until you hear about The Final Six.
That's really smart.
I've also been writing, and as Dare is doing as well, just working on everything for the anthology to come out. And I'm also extremely sad that I've seen the finale of WandaVision and now I have to wait. But my son is the only person who hasn't watched it in the house. So we're just going to have to rewatch it at some point so he can see it.
It's the worst when you actually get hooked on a good show the first season and then you have to wait.
It's like, oh.
I try really hard to resist them if I can so that I can just not have that delayed gratification, but sometimes you just got to go in that first season.
Agree.
It's worth it. Worth it.
How about you? What have you been doing to keep busy and unsettled?
Well, let me tell you, I whipped through Black Tom by Victor LaValle. It's not a surprise because it showed up as one of the books that you should check out if you enjoyed both Ring Shout and Lovecraft Country.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well,
Let me just say this. If you like both those books, you need to pick up Black Tom next. That's all. I mean, really, they need to be read, all three. 1, 2, 3. And then as far as like TV, my husband and I got hooked on Behind Her Eyes. At first, we were like, oh, this is great. And then we were kind of lulled and be like, well, I don't know. Then we made ourselves go back, and we're so glad we did. So give that one a look.
good.
Behind Her Eyes. It's on HBO, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And like you, trying to write, working on the series, working on the anthology, that'll keep you hopping.
Yeah, and we have spring break coming up here in
Yes.
our neck of the woods. So just to take a break and see the family a little bit
Yeah,
will
which
be
is
really
nice.
nice and maybe unsettling.
Yeah, I actually went for a hike the other day, which is super exciting because it's been a long time since we've been just able to go out and spend that kind of glorious
Yeah.
time outside. So that's all I have for this time. Can you think of
I'm
anything else?
good.
Well, then I'd say that means bye-bye.
For now.